Welcome back, everyone. My name is Joe, and for nearly a year now, I have documented my journey of writing a first novel. In fact, a trilogy of novels called Rivendoa. I live with my husband Richard and our granddaughter Hannah on 6 acres of land nestled in the wilds of Virginia. Every Monday, I post a video, and this week I'm celebrating All Hallows Eve by carving a pumpkin and sharing a countdown of the 31 most frightening monsters of fiction and film. So, I hope you'll join me on my adventures in living as a writer and an artist. Hey everybody, welcome back. For this week's video, we're going to be celebrating All Hallows Eve. I'm going to start out by carving this pumpkin, and then once I've got it carved, I'm going to take it down to the clearing, and I'm going to light a fire, brew up some coffee, and then we're going to sit back and do a monstrous countdown. I'm going to be counting off from 31 all the way to number 1, the top monsters of all time in fiction and film. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this idea of doing this today. Why don't you join me for this Halloween special video, and I'll go ahead and start carving, and then we'll head down to the woods. All right, I'm gonna start out with a design on the front. I'm going to turn it like right there and then have this shape right on the front, right here, a little bit bigger, of course. So let's go ahead and get started. You know, I'm just, well, let's see how it goes. Let's just go ahead and do it. I'm one of those people that just likes to get in there and get started. Kind of an evil eye. And then another one here. And I'll fine tune it as I start to work on it. Give him a evil nose. Probably expand that a little bit. Now the big thing is the mouth here. I have to give him this big old grin that goes all the way up the side of his face. Like that. Of course, I'll fine tune it once I start the carving. I may not stick to the lines, but that gives me a basic start. Can you see it there? All right, let's go ahead and start carving. All right, I'm going to start by carving the top out right here along this, and then I can start taking the guts out. Once I have the guts taken out, then I'll start working on the face. So, what do you say? Okay, here we go. I got him all cleaned up, and now I think it's time to see if we can go ahead and start carving that face out. So you ready? Here we go. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take that off. And I'm gonna start here with the eye. The trick is not to cut here, just to cut right around in here and get this part out. Kind of small, but I think I can do it. This is a very hard pumpkin. This is not something that anyone who doesn't have experience with cutting knives should probably do, because you could definitely hurt yourself. Now I'm going to come down here. Whoops. All right. Cut it across this way. See if I can pop this out. There we go. Now let's see if we can get in here just very gently. Woo! Popped right out of there. Now see how this is right here? I want to cut that out, especially right in here so that the light shines through. Kind of cut it out this way and that way so you get just the outline shape. So see if I can get in there and do that. It's tricky, but just kind of cut it on an angle like this. Just have to be careful. You don't want to cut into your line. Very gently. There we go. That does it. I may cut it off a little bit more. Oops. I did a little bit of a mess up there, but I'm going to smooth all this out. Get rid of all that black line. Okay, now we're starting on the second one. I'll go ahead and cut this way, so I don't cut into this part. Perfect. Okay, we're starting to make some progress. I'll do a little cleanup here on the eyes in a bit. Now I'm going to focus on the nose, which is, the eyes are always the hardest part, you know, because it's tight getting in there. But the nose should be fairly easy. So I'm just going to do a kind of a thing here. Ooh, there she goes. Set this one out. There we go. Now we got a nose. Needs definitely some cleanup in here. Now for the mouth. Ooh. You know, one of the things I've noticed is this is a very crisp pumpkin with very thick walls. The inside is extremely thick, much thicker than I usually see on a pumpkin. So it's taken a bit of carving to get this thing done, but I think it's going to look beautiful when I get it complete. Okay, that mouth is coming together. Let's see if I can get out another big chunk. That is going to be one scary mouth. All right. Got him roughed in. Got a pretty wicked looking grin here. So let me go ahead and clean him all up. Go ahead and do my cleanup along through here. Get rid of all the black lines. And we'll go ahead and light him up. Hey, I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way with an actual candle. Go ahead and drop some wax in there. I don't know if you can see that. Just like in the old days. A nice big bed of wet wax in there. And then stick the candle right in there. And let's see what it looks like. There it is. Can you see that? All right, guys, well, it's looking pretty good. I am gonna go ahead and take this guy out in the woods because he's looking pretty spooky. And I'm probably gonna wait for it to get a little bit darker. Then I'm gonna go out, take him out to the woods, go ahead and start a fire, brew up some coffee, and then we'll start our Halloween horror countdown of the 31 most frightening monsters of all time in fiction and in film. Hey everybody, well, I've gotten settled in. I've got my fire going, got all my stuff laid out, and I have my pumpkin over here ready to light. It's still not quite dark enough, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes, I think, to go ahead and stoke that fire, get it good and hot before I start my countdown. But anyway, I'm excited, and I hope you're as excited as I am for the 31 monsters of fiction and film. Well, it's that time of year again. That time of year when goblins, ghosts, and ghouls walk among us, seeking tempting treats and threatening tricks most foul. The sun sets in colors of gold, orange, and red. And as darkness grows, the stars wheel across the night sky. The glow of jack-o'-lanterns light the way for those brave souls who dare venture out into twilight's gloom. It's All Hallows Eve. Monsters roam the night, and our darkest fears rise up out of the shadows. All right, everyone, the fire's going, the pumpkin is lit. Are we ready to begin the countdown? These are the 31 scariest monsters of all time in fiction and film. And I guess they're primarily from my perspective. These are going to be my monsters because they're the monsters I grew up with and that I saw through most of my life, and the impression and excitement that they created for me in watching them and reading about them. So this may not be everybody's list, but this is my video, so it's going to be my list. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with number 31. 31, the Thetan alien. Now, you might not know exactly, some of you may not know what that is, others will know. It's from a episode of The Outer Limits called The Architects of Fear. And it was filmed in 1963 and was directed by Byron Haskins. Now, I remember The Outer Limits as a kid, and just the opening credits used to scare me. I was a little kid at that time when we were watching that on our black and white TV, and it was very frightening. And this particular episode creates a monster that is one of those monsters that is very frightening, horrible, terrible. But at the same time, you feel sorry for this monster. I don't want to give away what the episode is, but I'll tell you the moment in the TV show, in the episode that just really sent the chills down my spine, is when this creature, there's a woman who's there, and she's kind of broken into the lab because this spaceship has landed, and she's trying to find her husband. And this thing creeps down these steps, and you don't see it, you just see its shadow coming down the steps. And my goodness, it just sent chills down my spine. Whenever I think, in fact, if I watch the episode now, you can watch it on YouTube, it just sends chills down my spine. But anyway, it was really just a guy in a rubber suit, but it really was a very cool episode. And so the Thetan alien is gonna mark the beginning of my list. Now, I'm not gonna take as much time with each one, or we'll be here all night, but it was an important one, an important monster in my selection of monsters, so I wanted to give it a little time. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the next one. The next one are the Crawlers from The Descent, directed by Neil Marshall in 2006. And these are humanoid monsters that are in a cavern that are discovered by a group of women who get trapped in the cave and are trying to find a way out. And they discover these creatures, and they're actually humanoids. They sort of have a mix maybe with bats or something, but they've been left sealed in this area, and they've lived there and evolved their own way of living. And they are very frightening creatures. So that is number 30 on my list. Number 29, some may laugh at these, but they're atomic ants. And this is a movie called Them, which is directed by Gordon Douglas and came out in 1954. The script for this film is excellent. It is excellent writing. It's sort of a mystery in a way, because like some other films that are of more renown, like Jaws perhaps, or maybe even Alien, the monster is not shown that much. You only see them for brief seconds, and there's mist, or I think it's out in the desert, so there's storms always occurring, and you hear the sound that they make, and you see the destruction that they cause. And the protagonists in the story spent a lot of time trying to figure out what these creatures are. So anyway, I highly recommend this. I would go ahead and watch it. It's still as good today as it was back then. I saw it as a kid on TV and have always loved it. Number 28, giant trolls. This is from the movie Troll Hunter, directed by André Orvidal, and it came out in 2010. The thing about this is, it's hard to even believe that these giant trolls would be somehow out in the world and no one would know where they were because they're huge. But they are actually very believable and they look really real. And there's a couple scenes in the movie that are just excellent. So I highly recommend this film also. Okay, number 27 falls into the category of humor horror. You know, those movies that have are both funny and scary, you know, sort of like a Ghostbusters kind of thing. But these are the Graboids from Tremors, directed by Ron Underwood in 1990. The special effects are great in this, and the innovation of the monster, what kind of creature it is just, you know, and very unusual. The characters have a great time trying to escape from them, and you know, they travel underground. They're very frightening, and they definitely have to be on my list. Okay, number 26, The Blob Monster. Okay, The Blob, directed by Chuck Russell, is the one that came out in 1988. Now, that's not the one that some of you might know that came out in the 50s. I think it was 58 and stars Steve McQueen. That's sort of the old 50s version of the film. And that's fun too, but the 1988 version really kind of pushed the envelope in terms of what they could do visually with the creature, and it's very frightening in many places, and there's no escaping it. Number 25, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. This was directed by Jack Arnold in 1954. It's a black and white film. It has some very beautiful underwater work, and it is really a very nice film. And there are some very horrific moments, especially when there's a woman who's swimming on the surface and the creature is swimming right underneath of her. It's very well done. He's one of the universal monsters, and of course, you know, I find him to be, you know, up within the category of the 31 best monsters. I do also want to mention Guillermo del Toro's 2017 The Shape of Water, which was an excellent kind of take on A Creature from the Black Lagoon. It wasn't as scary, but the monster was fantastic. So anyway, I'm going to mention that one. Okay, number 24 on my list, The Mummy. The Mummy, directed by Karl Freund in 1932. This Mummy movie was the first, of course, and developed that whole concept. I have to just say that Boris Karloff, who played the Mummy, also played another character, which is, he's just as frightening as the Mummy. You can see the way he looks in this image, and but he also plays the monster, and it's just an excellent film, great monster. I also want to mention The Mummy by Alex Kurtzman with Tom Cruise in the 2017 film, which got a lot of thumbs down by critics, and people just were not interested in seeing it in that moment. But I like it. I think it's a good film. And I do also am sad to say that the Dark Universe, which was Universal's try to revamping and updating of the Universal monster, sort of slid to the wayside and is probably never, you know, who knows what's going to happen with it now. But I would love to have seen the Dark Universe make a comeback as the Universal Monsters films. All right, 23 on my list, Zombies. Of course, that's going to have to be Night of the Living Dead, directed by George A. Romero, of course, in 1968, and it sort of opened that entire genre up. It developed the whole idea of the zombie and the walking monster, Walking Dead idea of people rising up from the graves and or people dying and coming back as these flesh and brain-eating monsters. It's a disturbing film in many ways, and I also want to give credit to other zombies in the genre, The Walking Dead, of course. In fact, there's a new TV series out now called Day of the Dead, which is based on George Romero's film, and that is currently playing, I think, on Peacock. But anyway, you might want to check that out. But in terms of other zombie movies, Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 movie, I really liked that. And I guess that's all I can think of at this point. Of course, you know, The Walking Dead really lifted the genre up to a whole new level. All right, number 22, Gorilla Wolf Mofos. Now, I'm not going to say all that out because I think you know what it means. That was from the movie Attack of the Block, directed by Joe Cornish in 2011. And they had just the coolest monsters. You have to see it to really get what they are. They're just sort of like these big black furry things with these almost animated mouths that just are like glowing blue. Very interesting. It got on my list because it's just something completely different I've never seen before, and it was just a lot of fun. It sort of falls into that comedy horror thing, but you might want to check that out if you haven't seen it. And to get us to 21, which is going to be the first 10, we're going to take a break after this, and I'm going to stoke the fire, get my grill on, and get my coffee going, and then we'll do the next set of 10. But to round out the 31 to 21 are the alien creatures from the film Monsters, directed by Garth Edwards in 2010. He really plugged into the whole kind of journalistic idea of journalists in third world country kind of thing, trying to survive in a wartime kind of atmosphere. But there's a scene where they're in a convoy and they're attacked during the evening, during the night, by one of the creatures, one of the monsters, and it's just a great scene. That makes the movie as far as I'm concerned. And of course, the actors in it are excellent. For a sort of a low budget film, it's definitely one you want to check out. Okay, so first 10 done. I'm going to go ahead and stoke the fire. It's already burning down a little bit. Get my grill on, get my coffee brewing, and then we'll do number 10. We'll do 20 through 11. All right. All right, are you all ready for the next set? We're now going to do 20 through 11. Okay, let's start out with the werewolf. Now, I'm not going to mention the 40s version of that character, that creature. That film was a great film and a beautiful transition, innovative and for its time. But the movie that really sort of knocked me off my feet in terms of the best werewolf movie of all time has to be An American Werewolf in London. That was directed by John Landis in 1981, and it's all about the transition in that film. David Naughton and Griffin Dunn were excellent, and the FX work by Rick Baker he actually won an Academy Award for that film. Excellent film. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Now I'm going to go ahead and take that stuff is oh, there goes my water. Okay, hold on just a second. Oh my gosh. That water is just too hot. It is boiling, and I am definitely going to get it before it spills. Woo! That is some hot water. Whoa, Lord. Well, that's just going to have to wait a second. As you can see, I almost lost my water. The fire was a lot hotter than I thought it was, so I'm going to go ahead and prep the coffee now. And then while it's brewing, I'll go ahead and do the 20 through 11. But let me get this going here. Got my coffee. Ooh, almost lost that water. In fact, I hope there's enough water in here. Otherwise, it's going to be very hot. All right, here we go. Ooh, that is hot. Whew. All right. Okay, got it in here. If y'all can see that. Now it needs to brew for a few minutes before I press down. And so let's get back to it. All right, sorry about that. Ended up almost losing my water. Wouldn't want to have to start all over with that. So here we go. Okay, number 19. We did 20, the werewolf. Number 19, Dracula. Classic monster. One of the classics of all time. But this, the particular version of Dracula I wanted to point out was the bat monster from Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, which was in 1992. All practical effects, but that particular version of a vampire, which was this huge monstrosity. The film has a lot of great sequences of rats and bats, and in this bat creature, it shows how Dracula can manifest as an evil monster. And it's a great scene. He kind of rises up out of the darkness, and they're trying to, push him back, and he stomps around on these huge legs, and then he backs up into the darkness and becomes this thing of rats that just falls down, and then, rats take off through the place, and everybody's screaming. And great scene. I highly recommend it. But he's definitely the Dracula bat monster from Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola is just perfect. Anyway, he's my Dracula. All right, number 18, the Pale Man. This is one of the many creatures from Pan's Labyrinth, directed by Guillermo del Toro in 2006. And of course, that is a Doug Jones monster. He plays some of the best creatures. He's been in a lot of Del Toro's films, and he just is an excellent creature actor. He can do many other things. I've seen him in other films where he's just himself, and he's an excellent actor. But you know, his thin frame allows him to put on suits and still look normal, not look over bulky. And he just is. He's a perfect actor, a movement actor. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is number 17. One of my favorites is The Darkness from Legend, directed by Ridley Scott in 1985. You know, that makeup is just way over the top. Those horns are massive. And of course, it took somebody like Tim Curry to pull that off. I mean, he's able to manifest that character and make it totally believable. But anyway, The Darkness from Legend is, he's like the epitome of the devil monster. No one else has done it better. Okay, number 16, The Behemoth, which is the huge creature in the mist, directed by Frank Darabont in 2007. That movie has some excellent creatures. Now, I really like that film. He sort of took a different approach. He did more of a fast and loose approach to that film than he would normally take in a film. He's renowned for making Stephen King, bringing Stephen King's written works to life. And in this film, the creature of the behemoth, which walks over top of the main characters, and they're in a SUV, and the SUV is shaking, you know, as the thing walks past. And it's just a beautifully shot scene too, just visually very interesting. One of my favorite stories of all time, and the behemoth in that in the film version is got to be on my list. All right, number 15, The Rancor from Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. Of course, directed by George Lucas, came out in 1982. And you know, that creature is just the way it's appears on screen. You know, and this is pre-digital. You know, this is all practical effects. It's just an excellent monster, and very innovative looking, very frightening looking. And again, he's one of those monsters that when it's killed, you sort of feel sorry for it. But excellent. Got to be on my list. Okay, now that brings us to number 14, which is probably one of my all-time favorite monsters, is Bruce the Shark from Jaws. Of course, directed by Steven Spielberg in 1975. I remember seeing that film, and boy, there were a couple jump scares in that movie that I remember. One kid was sitting right, little black kid was sitting right beside me, and he had a big thing of popcorn. And I think it was either when the head pops out of the boat, the hole in the boat, or it was when you know, you need a bigger boat scene. I think it was that scene. But that kid jumped up out of the seat. The popcorn flew everywhere. People were screaming, and he grabbed hold of me and wouldn't let go for like a minute. I was like, whoa, you know, and I was just as scared as he was. So anyway, seeing that movie in the theaters, there's something, I mean, there are moments in the film, you know, when the shark jumps on the boat at the end where you go, oh my God, you know, that's a mechanical shark. But for the most part, that mechanical shark just, and of course, Spielberg's famous or infamous approach to the film, which is not to show the shark hardly at all throughout the entire film because it kept breaking down. But when he did show it, it looked real to me. In fact, you know, at the time, a lot of people hadn't seen sharks that much. You know, on some nature shows you saw them, but not like you see great whites today. So at the time, it looked very real. And the only thing, you know, there was something about the jaws right here, the mechanism with the mouth would open and close. You could see that it wasn't quite real, but for the most part, every time you see the shark on screen, it is very believable. Anyway, I won't go on and on about that, but I love that film. Will always love that film. And Bruce the Shark is on my list. Okay, number 13, The Death Angels. Those are the creatures from A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, and came out in 2018. And I just picked them because they're such an innovative monster, and they're very scary. You know, the whole concept behind sound as the thing that was getting people killed. And I just watched the sequel to the film where they kind of show it from the beginning, which, you know, I love that. You know, the first film sort of takes place a year or so after the incident occurs, when they all come out. You know, I think it was a meteor that landed and they jumped, you know, they came out, or I'm not sure exactly. They are aliens, but the idea that they cannot see or smell none of the other senses but sound, but it's so heightened that you make a pin drop almost, and they're coming running at you, and they just chop humans up like, ugh. So anyway, they're on my list. Okay, number 12 is Frankenstein's Monster, from Frankenstein, directed by James Whale in 1931. You know, I think he was the first of the Universal monsters. And it just caused a chain reaction when that film was released. You know, the makeup, the black and white, it being in black and white, which of course all films were at that time. And it also used sort of elements of German expressionist filmmaking with the dramatic lighting, you know, and the beautiful effects with the lightning. But it was Boris Karloff's monster that just was the epitome of a monster that, you know, was frightening and horrible and destructive and killed. And but then at the same time you felt sorry for it, because it really didn't, you know, that the Frankenstein didn't want to be what it was in the world. You know, it was created by who was the truly evil character, which was Dr. Frankenstein. But anyway, that is just a beautiful film, still beautiful to watch today. Highly recommended, and it's on my list. Okay, now we're down to number 11. This is another of my favorite monsters, fairly new one to the mix, the Balrog from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, directed by Peter Jackson, and came out in 2001. The way the filmmakers, the special effects, the fire effects for that creature, it's just an excellent, and not only is it a beautifully written scene in the books, in Tolkien's books, but the way Peter Jackson brought it to life on screen, the way Ian McKellen played Gandalf, and the interaction between these two characters, it's just a fantastic scene, a fantastic monster, and a fantastic visual filled with sort of terror, but also great sadness when Gandalf is killed. But anyway, just a beautiful scene, great monster, and he is all the way down to number 11. Didn't quite make my top 10, but definitely was very close. So okay, we've gotten through 20 so far, or 21, and now we are about to get to the final 10. I'm going to go ahead and pour my coffee and drink a little bit of it, and then we'll go ahead and do the final top 10 of the scariest monsters of fiction and film. All right. That's good. Nice to have a little bit of warm coffee. It's getting a little bit chilly. It's still not super cold for or chilly for this time of year, but I'm definitely starting to feel that fall tinge of cool weather is coming. All right, are you ready to continue? Here we go. We are down at number 10. All right. Are you ready? Okay, number 10, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg in 1993. Now, I know he's sort of a natural element. In many ways, he's sort of like Bruce from Jaws. He's a natural creature, or would have been a natural creature if he was in his right time. But he is a very frightening dinosaur, and the way he's portrayed in the first film, the way he breaks out of the compound, breaks through the fence and comes out between the two vehicles, and then goes after the kid's vehicle. That is just an incredible scene. The whole thing from beginning to end, the rain, the screaming kids, the way they act out the scene, the combination of the visual effects, which were the digital effects, the CGI use of CGI in that film just propelled CGI forward by leaps and bounds. Nothing had ever, a dinosaur had never looked like that before. I mean, it looked real. I mean, you look at it today and it still looks incredible. And also Stan Winston's mechanicals also were used a great deal, probably a lot more than some people think. Those mechanicals, you could, for all those close-up shots, really, whenever you don't see the full Tyrannosaurus Rex, you just see a head or a foot, that's all practical effects. It's when you see the full thing moving at speed, that's the digital effect. But anyway, the T-Rex had to be on my list as one of the big monsters of all time, so he definitely made it into the top 10. All right, number 9, another big monster. Of course, it's Gojira, which is Godzilla, directed by, and I'm going with the Godzilla. I mean, I love all the older Godzilla films, the guy in the suit, but it was really the one directed by Garth Edwards in 2014. That Godzilla is just perfection. It's a combination of a living creature plus it takes all the wonderful elements of the original Godzilla and creates a digital creature that looks very real, but also has that heft and body weight that the original had. Unlike the 90s version of Godzilla, this was one of the first CGI versions, and it just didn't work for me. The story was kind of goofy too. This story had its issues, but for the most part, that Godzilla was just perfection, and has been, as it's repeated and has come out in Godzilla Against the Monsters and in the Godzilla versus King Kong. All three films very well done, and the monster is great. Love it. So he's on my list. The next, of course, falls right into line, and that is King Kong direct, and I'm going with the one directed by Marion C. Cooper from 1933. Of all the Kong films, I love Peter Jackson's King Kong. I love the new Kong. I even love the 1976 version of the guy in the suit Kong. And also the funnier ones that fought Godzilla in the early days. But the original King Kong, which was an animated puppet by, stop motion animation by Willis O'Brien, to me is still a perfect film. That film is, one of the things, as much as I love Peter Jackson's kind of remake of that film, it was sort of bloated and it was just too much. That original film was short and sweet and perfect, and to this day it is still it's in my top 10 monsters of all time, and I love that film. Will always love it. He loved it as a child and loved it as an adult. So anyway, I'm moving on. Okay, next, for number 7, the demon Pazuzu from The Exorcist, the original Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin in 1973. Now, that creature, as it's manifested in the body of the 12-year-old girl, Reagan, is just a monstrous concept. In fact, there'll never be a film made like that again, because they don't put kid actors through this kind of thing anymore. And the things that were done in that film to Linda Blair were sort of tragic, and the way the public reacted to her, the way she was up for an Oscar and it was sort of pulled out from under her at the last minute. There's a lot of controversy. I was just reading about that. It really wasn't a great thing for her. But what she portrayed on the screen, the demon through her, was just one of the most frightening films. And it isn't a shock or a fright scare. There aren't any fright scares in that film. I mean, there might be one or two, but it's really a slow developing building of tension and evil that is just, I always feel weird after I watch that movie. And I watched it just recently, and I watched the complete version, not the one that's all chopped up that you see on TV. This shows all the aspects of it, and there are some very disturbing aspects to that film. Some things that were written into the original novel by Peter Blatty that were just horrifying. And so that creature, that the devil manifest in a child, is just definitely on my top 10. It brings in number 7. Okay, so that brings us to number 6, which is a new one on the list for me. And that is the incubus. I think that's what you call it. The creature, the thing from It Follows, which was directed by David Robert Mitchell and came out in 2015. I love the film. I love all the throwback aspects of it to kind of the 80s, the soundtrack. The look of the film has that kind of feeling of an 80s film. But beyond all that, that's just kind of icing on the cake. The concept is brand new. I have never seen anything like that before. And the fact that you never, for most of the film, you never see the creature. You just see people's reaction to it that have been, that it's following. It's an incubus in that it's a sexual creature, sexual demon or vampire demon, I don't know what, I guess demon, that walks after people. And it's interesting because it doesn't chase them, like run after them. It just plods along very slowly until it catches up with you. But if you think about that, something like that chasing you for your entire life, it'd be horrible. I'd probably pass it on too. But anyway, definitely falls as number 6 of my top 10. All right, number 5. Okay, number 5. We are down to number 5, halfway point through the top 10, and that is The Predator. The Predator Alien from Predator, directed by John McTiernan in 1987, and has appeared in many sequels and variations. Alien versus Predator has come in, but that creature in that original film, that face with the mandibles and the shape and size, it's just a overwhelming presence on film. And it took somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger to be the a protagonist antagonist to this creature. You needed someone of equal weight and size, and it's just an excellent monster of all monsters. So he definitely falls on my list. And also I just want to mention that's another Stan Winston creation. All right, number 4. Let me take a sip. That brings us to Brundlefly. Brundlefly from The Fly, directed by David Cronenberg in 1986. Just overall, David Cronenberg makes very disturbing films. Just the way he films, he tends to make very beautiful films. He sort of excels in the body horror genre, and this is definitely a body horror film. They're not necessarily my favorite monsters, but what it turns into is just horrifying. And what the creature becomes, over the course of the film, and the idea of the teleportation, it's just a wonderful film. Falls as number 4 on my list. Okay, number 3, Pennywise the Clown. Okay, I had to get Pennywise in there, primarily because he wouldn't have been on my list maybe at all if it hadn't been for the new films. It was directed by Andre Muschietti in 2017, and it's definitely the creature Pennywise is just an excellent creature, and very frightening in both fiction and in the film. But you know, the film just takes it to a new level. Absolutely beautiful. Really, you're gonna do this to me? All right, unfortunately, I am getting a low battery signal, so I have got to move ahead here. I'm going to say The Alien Thing is number 2. The Thing, directed by John Carpenter in 1982. Beautiful film. Some of the most grotesque monsters ever created by, I think it is Rick Bottin. It's just absolutely incredible. If you have never seen that film, you've got to see it. Okay, before we get to number 1, I've got a quick list of honorable mentions. The Amphibious Mutant from The Host by Bong Joon-ho in 2006. Great monster. Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. I don't have to say much about that, but he is a human, but monstrous in so many ways. I have to give Michael Myers a heads up, and for Halloween 1978, excellent. Poltergeist, the Poltergeist in the film Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper in 1982. Excellent. There's a lot of different versions of that creature, you know, as it manifests throughout the film, and I love all of them. I also want to mention The Curse of Frankenstein, the Hammer Horrors, directed by Terence Fisher in 1957. That was a Frankenstein that just that film was just an excellent film, and I love the monster. The Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr., 1941, beautiful transition, love that film. And I'm going to end out my honorable mentions with the Tripod Martians from War of the Worlds, Spielberg's film in 2005. I loved the tripods. That tripod scene in the beginning where it rises up out of the street, excellent. It was a flawed film in many ways, but that scene just captured H.G. Wells' Martians in a way that I don't think anyone ever has before or since. So anyway, that rounds out my honorable mentions. Now let's get to number 1. Okay, that brings us to number 1. The number 1 monster of all time is the xenomorph alien, directed by Ridley Scott in 1979 from the film Alien. That particular monster, first of all, it was designed by H.R. Geiger, and he, you know, I've always loved his artwork, just beautiful but frightening at the same time. And his take on an alien monster, I mean, you start with that, and then you take the special effects that they did in the film and the beautiful, superb story and directing by Ridley Scott. It's just a perfect film. I love Alien. It's it's an excellent film. I still remember going to see it in theaters in 1979. I was 18 years old at the time, and just was blown away by the creature. And you know, one of the things they did, which is very similar to what Spielberg did in Jaws, is they never showed the full creature, only a couple of times, but they did all these close-up shots of these beautiful, you know, the mouthpiece that comes out, and the face hugger. You know, there were so many elements to the evolution of that creature that just definitely put it on the top 10, from all the different aspects that it goes through. It's just one of the most excellent monsters, and definitely deserves the #1 spot on my list. All right, well, that wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed my countdown of the 31 scariest monsters of all time from fiction and film. Hope you enjoy your Halloween, and get out there and do some trick-or-treating on All Hallows Eve and see if you can see some of your own monsters. Anyway, good night and happy Halloween.